Good morning. Well, here we are. It's the number 5 in the 12th of the series. And it was quite a surprise to write this one, really, because I'd had so many requests for it. The Holloway book was a success, and I had a lot of requests for Miriam's War. And then they wanted to know what happened to the poor lady afterwards. So, hence, Miriam's War came after that, and then Miriam's Family Life, this one. Of course, Silver Years came after that, which will be next. More on that later, or at least on the next one. Anyway, this one covers the period from 1945 to, well, the next 4 years to 1949. And pretty desperate years, very, very desperate years, and an awful lot's happened. And that's about it, really. Yes, an awful lot's happened. Miriam finds somebody new, the soldier, mentioned in the last book, and the children grow up, and lots of things happened. Anywho, here we go.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are now plunging into the 5th installment of Miriam's story. And this is a period that might just be the most difficult and consequential one we've looked at yet.
I think so.
If the last few deep dives were all about the sheer, desperate energy of surviving the Blitz, the years we're covering now, 1945 through to 1949, they're just defined by this grim, crushing fatigue of recovery.
That's precisely the shift, isn't it? The end of the war was supposed to be a release, a return to normal.
Right.
But the source material, it paints this picture of just unrelenting hardship. The battle for stability, in some ways, it became even harder than the battle for survival during the war.
So our mission today is to really get into that paradox, the post-war austerity, Miriam's path through this profound personal loss to an unexpected second chance at love.
And motherhood.
Yeah.
And we have to dissect the emotional fault lines that nearly tore the Brow family apart, only to see them rebuild themselves, literally brick by brick.
Okay, so let's set the stage. You really have to put yourself in that 1945 mindset. They'd won, the war was over. But the sources, they immediately throw us into a world that feels defeated, not victorious.
Yes, that initial sigh of relief that just swept over the country in the summer of 45. It just dissipated.
So quickly.
Into what the source chillingly calls bleak years of harsh and unrelenting austerity. And that's a crucial distinction. People expected the war to be the peak of suffering.
But it wasn't. The economic aftermath was, in many ways, just worse.
And we see that so starkly with the Christmas of 1945. It's described as being the most joyless Christmas since 1938.
Since 38, that tells you everything, doesn't it? The weight of the war hadn't lifted at all. It morphed into this exhausting domestic grind.
And we often think, rationing ended with the war, but the opposite was true.
It actually got worse.
It got worse. It didn't just persist. In many ways, it became more punitive. And a big part of that was the end of the American Lend-Lease program.
Which had kept Britain supplied for years.
And suddenly that's gone. And the government is struggling to switch from military production back to civilian supply chains.
Yeah.
The infrastructure was just absolutely exhausted.
Let's get into the details for the Barrow family, because that's where it really hits home. In 1944, the Ministry of Food gave out these little Christmas concessions to boost morale.
Right, little extra sugar, a bit more meat.
Half a pound of sweets. By 1945, all of that was gone. Every single concession revoked.
And you see it in the meals. Miriam is perpetually cooking for a house of 10 hungry people. She has to be a master of resourcefulness.
She really does.
The sources specify that on Boxing Day, she was planning to make soup from the scraps. Literally the remains of the tiny Christmas pudding.
You're stretching every single ingredient to its absolute limit. It's a million miles from the post-war bounty that people had been dreaming of.
And the things that should feel celebratory, like gifts and decorations, just underscore the poverty.
It's all homemade.
Everything. The decorations are paper chains, glued together from whatever scraps of colored paper they can find. the Christmas crackers.
Oh, this part is heartbreaking.
It is a tradition that's supposed to have a little toy, a little novelty.
Hmm.
They just had a single penny inside.
A single penny. That is the absolute definition of making the most of nothing.
And the children's gifts. They weren't even getting individual presents. It was one small bar of Bournville chocolate, a box of dates, and an orange between all of them.
And Mary and Dawn, they shared a doll made from old stockings. It just reinforces that in 1945, your family's wealth wasn't what you could buy. It was how well you could recycle and stretch what you already had.
But amidst all this grimness, you see these little pockets of stability. Small personal victories become so important.
Like with Terry and Sarah, Miriam's sister.
Exactly. Their marriage is solid. Terry's got his fruit and veg stall, which gives them a steady income in a world where food scarcity is everything. That little business is literally keeping them fed.
And they're physically rebuilding their own world. Terry builds that L-shaped lean-to, modeling it on the one their father, Percy, had built.
It's a beautiful little detail, isn't it?
It is. That and the announcement that Sarah is pregnant with their second child, it's symbol that while the nation is sort of crumbling, this younger generation is actively, successfully building their own secure little life.
But that stability just stands in such sharp contrast to what's happening back in number 10, Miriam's home.
Yeah, this next section tracks the really quick, really sad decline of Faith, their mother. The source shows her slowing down dramatically, just sitting with her tea while Miriam runs the whole household.
And her health is handled with that classic stiff upper lip thing. She's having these rattling, coughing
But
fits.
anyone brings it up.
She gets agitated, annoyed, a complete refusal to acknowledge what's happening. It's that very Victorian idea of discretion over, medical necessity.
And what's fascinating is that the truth comes out through the children. It's Dawn, Emily's daughter, who makes this deeply disturbing discovery.
The crimson-spotted handkerchiefs.
Tucked into Faith's apron. That immediate visual, the color on the white cloth, it's the shock moment.
It's the point of no return. Soon after that, she has a massive episode, coughing up blood, rushed to St. Mary's. And the diagnosis is what they feared.
Advanced lung cancer.
And for Miriam and Emily, the shock is just mortifying. This is relentless, consecutive grief. They've only just lost their father, Percy.
It feels like the universe just won't give them a break, a double blow. They just started to process losing Percy, and now the matriarch, the family's anchor, is being taken away too.
And the funeral details are so telling about how the post-war world was changing. Percy's funeral was massive. He was a war casualty, a pillar of the community.
Right.
Faith's, however, is described as a far more discreet and intimate gathering.
And the people from Percy's world are missing. The friends from the Auxiliary Fire Service, the AFS, they aren't there.
Their absence signals the end of that tight-knit, wartime reliance on each other. People are retreating back into their own private civilian lives.
And the most poignant detail, the one that really marks the closure of that generation, is the coffin.
Yes, Faith was lowered to rest on top of Percy's coffin.
It's a physical layering, a closing of the chapter on their parents.
And Miriam, the pragmatist, she's struggling to imagine life without her mother. She feels the end of an era, but she has to maintain that fierce emotional control. She's holding the family together.
But that shield has cracks, doesn't it? We see moments of real vulnerability.
We do. And they come in these unexpected sensory moments, like when Roy lights his pipe.
The smell of the tobacco.
The smell of the tobacco is so much like Percy's that she bursts into tears instantly. It's the kind of grief you can't reason with. It just shows the immense suppressed burden she's carrying.
So we have this immense grief, the struggle against austerity, but life, as it does, it pushes forward. Miriam is mourning, but she's also intensely focused on Roy Barker. He's her future.
But distance and circumstance are creating this incredible friction in their courtship.
Yeah.
Roy is completely sucked down in Exeter.
And his situation is dire. His father has a stroke, dies, and the family bakery just consumes his entire life.
Completely. One brother's away for work, the other's still in the army. So Roy is left trying to run this struggling business all by himself, working these absurd hours.
And it wasn't just the time, it was the money. Hotels in London were ridiculously expensive.
And his usual cheap place to stay with his Uncle Jim, that's gone. Jim retired and moved away. It's like every practical barrier is being put up to keep them apart.
This is where Miriam takes control. After Faith's will is read, she gets control of the house, and her first big decision is to get new technology. A telephone.
Stratford 4587.
Getting a phone in 1946, that's not just a convenience, it's a statement. It's a luxury.
It is. And the difference is instant. Roy starts calling her every single Saturday night, after 6. That thrill of hearing his voice, closing that 170-mile gap. It's a lifeline.
But the technology is flawed, isn't it, for what they need?
It is. This is the classic frustration of early tech. The phone was installed in the downstairs hallway of number 10.
A public thoroughfare.
Exactly. There are too many listeners, kids, family, neighbors passing by. She can never really speak her mind, never talk about her real fears for their future.
So the phone is a structural fix, but not an emotional one.
Precisely. It's too public. And this forces her to go back to writing these long, detailed weekly letters. And it's in those letters that she can really explore her feelings, which sets the stage for their next meeting.
And that meeting is in June 1946. Miriam and Mary take a long coach trip down to Exeter. But the trip, ironically, it just reinforces her desire to keep Roy in London.
Because Exeter, like Coventry, was heavily bombed. She sees the devastation, and it's a profound shock. The atmosphere is just miserable, cold, and she sees what she calls extreme poverty.
She feels it's even worse than London.
She does. And it solidifies her thinking. She absolutely cannot leave her life in the East End for this bombed-out provincial city.
And Roy's at a breaking point, too. He's caught between this promise he made to his father in a war crater.
A promise to make the family bakery a success.
Right. But the economic reality is just brutal.
He confesses to her the shop is on its last legs. He's dealing with high grain prices, rationing, a broken infrastructure. He's trapped. His duty to his father is in direct conflict with his desire to marry Miriam.
And it's against this backdrop that she decides she has to tell him her big secret. The thing that has haunted her.
Her year in Holloway prison.
For stealing food to feed her family. She even admits her own mother thought she was barmy for not telling him sooner.
This moment on Dartmoor is the absolute psychological pivot of their whole relationship. She is braced for rejection.
She thinks this is it. He's going to walk away.
But his immediate reaction is one of just radical acceptance. And then he hits her with a counter-confession.
His own dark family secret. That his twin brother, Paul, also died in prison way back in 1914.
And this changes everything. You can almost feel the shame just evaporate from Miriam. She realizes she isn't marrying into some perfect family.
No, she's marrying into a reality that mirrors her own. Her family wasn't the only one with a jailbird.
It's this shared recognition of desperation, that good people can be driven to do desperate things by circumstance, that forms this unbreakable foundation for them.
It's shared trauma, not shared joy, that really solidifies their bond. And right after this, he proposes. He knows they're strong enough for anything.
And just as they're making plans, fate intervenes again, but this time with this extraordinary piece of good fortune. Sam Smith, the next-door neighbor, Percy's old friend, dies.
Unexpectedly in December 1946, and this is where you see the power of those community ties. Sam had no immediate family.
And the announcement is just.
Yeah.
It's an astonishing windfall. Peter and Mary are the sole beneficiaries of his entire estate.
Which includes his bank balance, insurance policies, and his house. Number 8, White Road.
Getting a whole house. In a post-war Britain defined by housing shortages and squalor, that is monumental. It changes Miriam's trajectory completely.
So the kids inherit when they turn 21, but Miriam, as the trustee, can move in right away and use some of the money for repairs.
And the move, in March 1947, is just pure chaos. Miriam, Roy, Mary, and Peter move into number 8, which immediately needs gutting.
And this creates this very awkward living situation.
It really does, because Rafa moves into the ground floor of their old house, number 10, and Roy, the groom-to-be, moves into the upstairs of number 8 with Miriam and her children.
So they are effectively living under the same roof, unmarried, in 1947 London. The neighbors must have been talking.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yeah.
But the sources suggest that sheer necessity just overrode social decorum. People were too stressed and exhausted to maintain appearances. Social niceties were a casualty of the housing crisis.
And inside this new house, she finds something bizarre and deeply human. In the cellar.
The 2 thin wooden boxes.
Sealed with wax.
Yeah.
Inside, long tresses of white and gold hair.
It's incredibly sad. It speaks to this private grief that Sam, this quiet neighbor, had been carrying. He'd preserved a literal physical piece of his late wife and child.
A kind of post-Victorian sentimentality.
Exactly. And Miriam, despite selling all his other stuff at Brick Lane Market, she recognizes the value of that grief. She keeps the tresses. It shows this deep connection she feels to his loss. Another layer of tragedy.
So Miriam should be enjoying her new house, planning her wedding, But 1947 delivers another punishing blow, both nationally and personally.
Yes, moving into the new house coincides with a national environmental disaster.
The Great Winter.
The winter of late 46, early 47, it was a catastrophe. It wasn't just a harsh winter. It was a societal paralysis. Snow fell for 26 out of 28 days.
And London was choked by snowdrifts higher than a man's height. The transport network, already rickety, just seized up.
Which had terrifying consequences for supply. Coal stocks, essential for heat and power, froze solid. The railways were paralyzed. It took 100,000 troops and German POWs to clear the tracks manually.
And the family, like millions of others, runs out of coal. They're burning scraps of wood, huddling together, eating by candlelight.
And the weather means unprecedented food scarcity. Root vegetables froze in the ground. 70,000 tons of potatoes were destroyed.
Which leads to potatoes being rationed for the first time ever in British history.
That detail is so pivotal, it just highlights the endurance required. 2 years after the peace treaty, and conditions felt like they could not have gotten much worse.
So as the country is struggling with this external crisis, the Barrow family starts to fracture internally.
It really does. And it's primarily because of Emily's, well, her volatile love life. She's engaged to Alan Brown, a respectable guy, Penelope's old boyfriend. He represents stability.
But the past comes back. Her wartime GI lover, Edison Davis, shows up. He's just been released from Exeter jail after a 10-year sentence.
The sentence for a fight over race at the base. And he immediately seeks Emily out.
And the betrayal is just swift and absolute. She breaks the engagement with Alan, who is devastated, and rushes to marry Edison.
Miriam's reaction is pure fury. It's rooted in this strict sense of moral obligation.
She accuses Emily of having no honor, of destroying Alan's life.
But you have to wonder, is Miriam maybe failing to see the trauma here? Emily lost a baby with Edison during the war. Perhaps this reunion is a desperate attempt to recover the life she lost, no matter the cost to Alan.
Whatever the motivation, the result is a bitter, prolonged rift. The sisters just stop speaking to each other.
And this hostility peaks later, at Penelope's wedding in October 1948. And even that celebration is just fraught with austerity. Penelope wanted a white wedding, but reality bites.
The wedding dress controversy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no fabric. She's forced to wear her father-in-law's deceased wife's dress from the 1920s. Miriam and Rafa have to hastily mend this outdated thing to make it wearable.
And then there's that strange moment at the reception. The father-in-law, Mr. Parson, does this double take when he sees Miriam, Emily, and Sarah.
The source suggests they strongly resembled his late wife. It adds this eerie, almost replacement-like layer to the whole thing.
But the personal drama just overshadows everything. Penelope refuses to speak to Emily at the baby's party afterwards. The damage from Emily's decision was deep and lasting.
So with the family divided and financial pressure still on, Miriam goes back to work at Wilkinson Electrics.
And this is where the cumulative stress of the last decade finally, it manifests violently.
Her manager, Mr. Radigan, he's described as this short, verbally abusive man with a Hitler-like mustache. He's a petty tyrant.
A bully.
A classic workplace bully. But Miriam, under all this strain-moving house, grief, the memory of Holloway, she's a coiled spring.
And he pushes her too far. Over a delayed lorry, he throws a small Bakelite paperweight at her.
And Miriam just snaps. She doesn't cower. She retaliates. She physically strikes him.
Which is an incredibly risky move for a woman who has already been to prison.
A monumental risk. And the act is so unexpected that Radigan is instantly cowed. He just falls back into his chair. And the practical result is fascinating.
He becomes polite.
Instantly polite to all the female staff. Her violent outburst, while terrifying, was an effective response to the abuse.
But for Miriam, the emotional cost is immediate terror. She's worried she's going back to Holloway for assault.
And she starts reflecting on where this violence comes from. She draws a line back to a childhood incident, hitting a boy with mistletoe. This isn't just temper. It's a recognition that the trauma of prison and the constant grinding stress have left her with this dangerous reservoir of repressed emotion.
He's questioning her own nature.
She is. Is this violence innate, or is it a desperate response to a brutal world? It's a reminder that healing is not a straight line.
As Miriam is grappling with all this, 1948 brings more unexpected changes. New life, but also new threats that challenge the security she's fought so hard for.
The first, and maybe the most joyous surprise, is her pregnancy. She's approaching 40. In that era, she'd have thought her childbearing years were long over.
She goes for a checkup for nausea and discovers she's over 3 months pregnant. The due date is January 1949.
It's an unlikely, wonderful shock against this backdrop of difficulty. And Roy is just thrilled.
Peter, though, has the classic teenage response.
He does. He just flippantly remarks that his mother was getting a bit fat. It's a funny little moment that juxtaposes the profound significance of this new life with the ordinary indifference of a teenager.
So Florence Barker is born in January 1949. The christening party is huge, nearly 50 people.
But even that celebration can't completely get rid of the tension. The rift between Emily, Alan, and Penelope is still there, palpable. Roy tries to mediate, but the moral lines the sisters have drawn are stubborn.
And shortly after Florence's birth, Miriam takes a trip to Kent with Rafa
To visit their friend Akina from Holloway. And Akita's doing so well. She's a senior aircraft woman of the WAAF, and she drives a Fraser-Nash sports car.
What a symbol of independence for someone who started on the margins.
It really is. But the trip takes a very dark turn. While they're out on a walk, Miriam is attacked.
By an unknown man, implied to be from the nearby military base. She's physically assaulted, her stockings are torn.
And the attack is only stopped because Rafa and Akina arrive and scare him off. She's physically okay, mostly, but terrified.
And the emotional fallout when she gets home is huge. Roy is fiercely protective. He sees it as an attempted rape.
His reaction is almost disproportionate. Miriam is surprised by the depth of his rage. He writes this furious letter to the Chief Constable of Kent, demanding action.
And Miriam senses there's something deeper driving his reaction. It's more than just a husband's outrage.
She's right. He's forced to reveal this profoundly traumatic childhood secret. He was severely beaten by his father for not watching his little brother, Paul, who later died.
Oh, wow.
This trauma instilled in him this deep-seated fear of failing his duty to protect the people he loves.
So he associates Miriam's assault and his absence with that agonizing memory of powerlessness.
Exactly. His fierce protection of her is less about the current event and more about desperately trying to rewrite his own history of not being strong enough to prevent a tragedy.
And running parallel to all this, we have Rafa trying to build her own independent life.
In the ground floor of number 10. She's succeeding, planning a future with her Sikh partner, Ganesh. But her path gets complicated by Miriam needing help with Roy's family.
She persuades Rafa to take in Roy's baddie, Aunt Ruby,
who is described as suffering from lunacy. And she brings immediate chaos. She's demanding, disruptive, a real test of Rafa's new stability.
And it escalates beyond just disruption. Ruby causes an incident, disappears, and Rafa returns home to find a fire has been deliberately started.
A can of paraffin is found nearby. The strong implication is that Ruby was the arsonist.
The damage is extensive, fire damage upstairs, water damage downstairs, a devastating setback.
But what's fascinating is that this disaster forces a commitment. Despite the damage, Rafa decides to stay in Stratford. She marries Ganesh shortly after in a Sikh wedding.
But her Scottish tenant moves out. The chaos is too much. It just proves that stability in this post-war world is constantly being undermined.
So as the older generation is cleaning up the mess from war and fire, the young generation has to step into their own future, facing these new institutional obligations.
And the state reaches out its long arm again. National service is announced.
All young men aged 17 to 21 have to serve 18 months in the armed forces, plus 4 years on reserve.
And Peter, Miriam's son, is shocked. He's settled into his apprenticeship as an electrician. This conscription is a major interruption to his career path.
His immediate response is pragmatic. He decides to marry his new girlfriend, April, before he leaves.
And April has a tragic background, parents killed in the war, living with a vitriolic grandmother who treats her like a servant, a skivvy.
So Peter's choice isn't just romantic, it's strategic. Getting married gives him a certain status, but more importantly, it rescues April. It brings her into the Barrow family, who will look after her while he's away.
The farewell scene at Victoria Station just captures the whole tension of the era perfectly.
It really does. Peter's at the station, waving excitedly from the train, full of a young man's enthusiasm for adventure.
And Miriam, in stark contrast, is sobbing miserably into her handkerchief.
That clash is everything. It's the tension between the promise of peace and the immediate demand for continued military service. The state is still claiming the bodies and time of these young men.
But in complete opposition to Peter's conscription, Mary is offered a very different path.
A path to upward mobility through intellectual merit. She passes the new, critically important 11+ exam.
which is monumental. We can't overstate how significant this was. The 11 plus was the gatekeeper. It selected children out of the traditional working class track and put them into state-funded grammar schools.
It was the path to the post-war professional class, and she's the first in the family to get this chance. It's a fundamental step up for the whole Barrow lineage.
Miriam throws herself into preparing Mary for this. She selects East Ham Grammar School for girls. She meticulously gets the new uniform, manages her own anxiety over the interview.
She recognizes this as her daughter's chance for a future that's fundamentally different from her own, a future built on knowledge and security, not endless struggle.
And this leads her to have the talk with Mary about puberty, an uncomfortable conversation her own mother, Faith, would have avoided completely.
But Miriam does it. She breaks that cycle of avoidance and shame. She chooses to educate Mary, to prepare her not just for academic success, but for the realities of womanhood. It's a real moment of intergenerational evolution.
And finally, we get a hint of reconciliation, a moment of healing. The long, bitter rift between Miriam and Emily finally begins to cool down.
And the way it happens is so understated, so believable. Miriam is shopping at Terry's fruit stall, and she spots Emily. There's no grand, dramatic reunion.
No apologies.
No. Their conversation's stiff, but it's non-confrontational. The moral outrage Miriam felt it's subsided into this weary acceptance.
And instead of arguing about the past, about Edison or Allen, they focus on neutral ground.
Terry's stall. The price of fruit. This small, mundane connection signals this quiet, mutual desire to mend the rift. It's a return to the East End's pragmatic reality. Family has to come first.
So we've spent this deep dive immersed in 4 of the most brutal, complicated years in this family's history. It's clear the period after World War II wasn't a party. It was a painful, protracted reconstruction. So what are the big takeaways?
Well, I think there are 3 major interlocking points that really define Miriam's world between 1945 and 49.
First, just the incredible resilience of the working class. This wasn't a story about government support. It was about personal endurance. They faced worse rationing than during the war, environmental catastrophes.
And they relied on their own ingenuity, making soup from putting scraps, mending inherited clothes, because the promised salad days just never arrived.
Second, personal reconstruction is built on shared trauma. Miriam's life is a cycle of rebuilding. But her bond with Roy isn't built on some idealized perfection.
Not at all. It's built on the radical acceptance of their darkest secrets. Holloway, Paul's death. It proves that authentic relationships in that world required facing the past head-on.
And finally, the lingering price of trauma. We saw it everywhere. Roy's violent protectiveness, driven by a childhood beating. Emily's rash decisions, driven by wartime loss.
And Miriam's own violent outburst at Mr. Radigan. That was years of repressed grief and stress just exploding. Healing is messy, and their past trauma really dictated the geography of their conflicts.
So as we close, here's a provocative thought for you to consider. Mary's stunning success in passing the 11 plus offers the family this clear path toward upward mobility, a future defined by education, merit, opportunity.
Yet that hopeful possibility is immediately juxtaposed against Peter's forced entry into military service. The state is still making a claim on the young men who just survived a global conflict.
So in this ongoing struggle of post-war Britain, where both academic excellence and military service demand this profound institutional commitment, will the next generation truly find the freedom and stability the adults dreamed of?
Or is institutional obligation, whether it's military or academic, simply the inescapable new reality?